All right, let's dive right in. There is a massive, and I mean a massive line in the sand between merely going through the motions of religion and experiencing true life-altering redemption. Today, in this explainer, we are unpacking a really hard-hitting sermon from 1122. It issues this passionate warning against spiritual complacency, and it completely confronts the difference between just playing the part and actually knowing the Savior. So think about this for a second. What is the absolute greatest danger facing the modern church today? The 1122 sermon we're exploring makes a really bold claim here. The ultimate threat? It isn't out there in the culture, it's actually right inside the walls. It's complacency. It's sitting in a pew being entertained and never actually being transformed. Let's explore exactly what that looks like.
Which brings us to our first point, the very real danger of apathy.
Over in the book of Revelation, Jesus issues a prophetic warning to the ancient church of Sardis. He tells them to wake up. Now, to the outside world, this church looked alive. They were thriving. But Jesus essentially calls them a zombie church. And historically, this makes so much sense. Sardis was a famously impenetrable fortress, but they were actually conquered twice because their guards literally fell asleep on duty. That is exactly what was happening to them spiritually. They were walking dead because their passion was completely gone.
The sermon compares this apathy to the biblical fig tree Jesus encountered. You know the story. It looked incredibly healthy on the outside, but when you got close, it produced absolutely nothing of substance. It really forces a terrifying question upon us. Are you all leaves and no fruit? Are we just playing the part, learning a bunch of facts about Jesus, but never actually doing anything with that knowledge?
And that perfectly sets up part 2, religion versus true redemption. Because looking the part is vastly different from actually knowing the Savior. Just think about the crowds at the triumphal entry. People were cheering, they were throwing palm branches, completely caught up in the cultural hype. They knew about him as a prophet, sure, but they didn't really know him as a savior. It's a huge warning to us not to mistake the energy of a Sunday crowd for a deeply personal relationship with God. Human nature naturally gravitates toward what just feels good. The supplemental text in 2 Timothy warns us against having itching ears, which is basically this diseased appetite for comfortable, affirming messages instead of the difficult truth. We kind of want to consume spiritual junk food that caters to our desires, rather than enduring the sometimes painful truths that actually lead to real growth. And in a culture that is overly sensitive to truth, but somehow completely desensitized to sin, we desperately need truth speakers. Real love isn't about just keeping people comfortable. It's about having the courage to speak the truth. It's about being willing to correct, to rebuke, and to encourage when it matters most. Let's look at how Jesus handled this in part 3, overturning the tables. You see, Jesus didn't just quietly tolerate this empty religious status quo. He violently disrupted it. He walks into the most religious city, goes straight into the temple, literally makes a whip, and drives out the people who were commercializing the faith. He reclaims that space, boldly declaring it a house of prayer rather than a marketplace. He kicks out the prideful leaders who thought they were chosen to be chosen, making it crystal clear that his house is not for profit. The religious elite, well, they thought they owned the place. But Jesus removes them and immediately invites in the blind and the lame, the exact people the elite had excluded. Jesus makes the rules about who belongs. This was a radical pivot. We're moving from an exclusionary, rules-based religion to a redemptive system where the marginalized are instantly welcomed in. The old system, it was all about keeping people out based on strict outward rules. The new system is entirely about grace. It's this open invitation extended to anyone desperate enough to know they need a savior. Which flows right into part 4, turning water into wine. So at the wedding in Cana, Jesus doesn't just fix a catering issue. He's making a massive theological statement here. Those stone water jars, they were originally used for Jewish purification rituals, washing dirty hands and feet. But Jesus takes this stale water of old religious duty and he transforms it into the rich, abundant wine of his new kingdom. Just as he quietly rescued that bridegroom from absolute social ruin, he rescues us from empty routine. He offers us the 100-proof grace of true redemption. He steps in behind the scenes, he shows tremendous compassion, and he provides something infinitely better than anything we could ever manufacture on our own. So what kind of faith does this take? That's part 5, mountain-moving faith. The 1122 sermon really challenges us to deeply evaluate our prayers here. Are we only seeking temporary earthly relief, things like finances or physical healing, or are we begging for the mountain-moving miracle of eternal salvation? While God absolutely cares about our daily needs, those things are ultimately temporary. The only truly eternal miracle is the salvation of a human soul. And receiving that miracle requires a mandate to completely abandon our spiritual sloth. Romans 12 commands us to be fervent in spirit. If you have genuinely experienced this mountain-moving miracle of salvation, you cannot remain apathetic on the sidelines. You have to serve, you have to make disciples, and actively participate in the faith. Finally, part 6, knowing the Savior. The book of James echoes this perfectly. It tells us that consuming spiritual junk food without action leaves us completely empty. True faith requires obedience. If we just listen to sermons and read devotionals without actually doing what they say, we are literally deceiving ourselves. Faith at its core is an action verb. We absolutely must reject the dead liturgy of the scribes and embrace the transformative, table-overturning love of the Savior. The religious elite back then, they had all the right answers, but they completely missed God when he was standing right in front of them. The Savior offers an active, living relationship that fundamentally changes how we live our everyday lives. So look at your own life right now. Are you just caught up in the cultural hype of church? Do you possess leaves but no actual fruit? Or has Jesus overturned the tables in your heart and turned your stale water into new wine? Ask yourself, are you just cheering in the crowd, or do you actually know him?